You might be wondering, who is this guy? And to answer that question, I'm a generic MMO player who has a long history and nobody really cares. But what you do care about is the Ashes of Creation Alpha 1 Phase 1 stress test, which I happen to play, like just now. So let's talk about it. First, I want to mention a disclaimer that I am not a hype beast. I'm not going to be like, whoa guys, it's so cool, oh, whoa, dude, just turn it to a bush and get a spear and shoot. Oh my, guys, it is great, guys, because I kind of lost those emotions and my will to live when I was about 12 when RuneScape 3 came out. Now here comes the question, was it fun? And to that my answer is, well, yeah, it was pretty good. But that does not mean you should be going into the alpha with the mentality of, oh boy, because you might be sorely let down. The main goal of you alpha testing this is to, well, test the game out. You are testing out the combat, you are testing out the mechanics, the fluidity, the stress test, all that stuff. Fun should not be your main priority coming into this alpha because you might be disappointed. Now, if you're like me, I managed to have fun while testing out the game, but I did not have my expectations high as in like, oh, wow, this is game of the year, guys, Fortnite 2. When the devs say it's an alpha state, they mean it's an alpha. This isn't going to be like a AAA game where they have alphas and betas, 75% for the sake of just marketing and showing off a near finished game. And this isn't going to be like one of those early access games off Steam that stay in alpha for like 3 years. This is a real true alpha to its core, so there are issues, there are bugs, and there are unpolished things, which is why us testers are here to help improve that. For example, the very first match I got into, I landed outside of a house and I run inside and pick up a sword, and as I'm going up the stairs, I see this upper body and head of a player who got stuck in the stairs, and I just proceed to have this duel with half of a man and I kill him, and then just run away questioning what just happened. The second match I get into, I jump out from the portal, which is like your Fortnite battle bus or your PUBG airplane, and I'm gliding on my Griffin, which is pretty much your parachute, and I'm just pressing all sorts of random buttons, seeing if I can speed up or slow down and stuff. Well, I press E, which I guess is short for eject, because I proceeded to dismount my Griffin and fall 400 feet out of the sky and just die, so that was a pretty quick run. Now, the third match I had was much better. I actually managed to get 3 kills on people who were not stuck in stairs, and I really got a better feel for the spells and overall controls and aiming and stuff. And I had a pretty fun time, despite some bugs, which I will get into. It was pretty fluid with the swinging and stuff. The combat is pretty functional, actually. And I will say, the action combat, in the Battle Royale mode at least, is very unique, and it's unlike any other MMO you've probably played before. It's kind of like a blend between multiple things. It's kind of like Black Desert, but not as wombo combo. It's kind of like Warframe, even though I know Warframe's not an MMO. It has Warframe elements, as you've probably seen, just not as ninja-y and slidey all over the place. There were also a lot of things that I didn't really expect to see in an MMO, but that I can appreciate. Like there was zooming on the range weapons, and even the crossbow had a scope that you could see through, and you could hear other players' footsteps through buildings, and you could hear their abilities in the distance, and by not sprinting or crouching, you could reduce the sound of your own footsteps, and that's kind of something that you find in arcadey shooter games like CSGO, Call of Duty, Overwatch, stuff like that. So it's really interesting to see that put into an MMO, and I actually hope that they keep it for the full open world version, because that would make ambushing and getting ambushed very interesting. I did get to either use or play against nearly every type of weapon, so I'm just going to go over each one in brief detail. The wand fires off shots pretty rapidly, but each individual shot doesn't do that high of damage. The staff was interesting because I kind of expected it to have some ranged attacks to it, but that thing was just pure melee. You literally just beat someone with a stick. It's pretty cool though if you're trying to be like a close range battle mage or something. The scepter was really interesting because you swing it and it actually creates some projectiles that sit in the air for a little while, and then after a delay they go and fire out to the location that you aimed it at. It's almost like a delayed shotgun because it has like these scatter shots that all fire at once after the delay. But I found it kind of hard to use because once they do finally fire, your target will have probably moved already. The crossbow has 5 shots per, I guess, clip before you have to reload it, but it hits pretty hard. There are 2 kinds of bows, short bows and long bows. Short bows are pretty straightforward. They're, as you would imagine, fire pretty consistently. The long bow, on the other hand, fires a more singular, powerful shot, but has a bigger delay. So you definitely don't want to miss with the long bow. The potion launcher is essentially a grenade launcher. It fires bombs that bounce off of the floor and will explode on impact with an enemy. The spear and halberd both attack really fast and deal some pretty decent damage, but I couldn't really find much of a difference between the 2 weapons, and I think that's just because the halberd is probably still in development, and for now it shares the same attacks and animations that the spear has. I tried to see if maybe the halberd swings a little bit slower than the spear or something, but after I compared the 2, there was no real notable difference. The one thing that separates them as of now is in the ability they provide, because each weapon type gives one different ability. So for example, the halberd gives an ability that makes your attacks give lifesteal, and the spear has an ability that makes your attacks drain stamina out of your enemy. The mace is essentially the longbow of melee weapons. It swings really slow and drains a lot of stamina each swing, but if you manage to land a hit with it, it'll deal a good chunk of damage. The axe is pretty similar, high damage, but a lot of stamina drain and slower swings than something like a sword. The great sword is a little bit better, slower than a one-handed sword, but deals pretty good damage and a little bit faster than the mace. The sword and shield is really convenient because its ability allows you to block enemy attacks. I know it works for blocking projectiles, but I'm not entirely sure if you can block melee attacks with it, because I didn't really get to try that out. Lastly, the spellbook is the one weapon that I'm not too familiar with. I did have it used against me a couple times, but all they really did was spam the meteor ability, and I didn't really get to see what its regular attack is. Or if it even has a regular attack. If it does, I'd assume it's probably something similar to the wand, maybe a little bit slower, but more damage. But yeah, I didn't even bother picking up a stupid book. Who you think I am? But you know what's not a stupid book? Polymorph. I think that's my favorite ability from the whole stress test. And you've probably seen from the gameplay that you can turn into a bush. Well, that's not the only thing. You can turn into a lamp, you can turn into a box, you can turn into a bench, and a wagon, all sorts of great things. So onto the bugs and nuisances I found while playing. If you're using a melee weapon, it looks like you would just cleave and anything your weapon passes through would count as a hit, right? Well, actually, your hit only registers if your target is in the crosshair. So visually, even if your sword passes through the enemy, if your enemy wasn't in the crosshair, then your hit just won't register. So it's a little bit of a visual nuisance, because sometimes it looks like, oh yeah, I hit this guy, I hit him, but you didn't hit him. It's okay, man. It's okay. It's fine. Another nuisance I found is when you deal or receive damage, obviously it spits out a number telling you how much damage was dealt, which is perfectly fine, but there's no difference in color between the damage you take and the damage you deal. They look exactly the same. So when you're in close quarters combat with somebody and you're both there smacking each other and it's spitting out a whole bunch of different numbers, you don't know whose numbers are whose. You don't know if you took that damage or you dealt that damage. And for example, I was fighting some guy and there was like 6 or 7 numbers of damage that popped out, and I thought, oh yeah, like 5 of those are probably mine. Oh yeah, he's about to be dead. And then I died, and I look at his HP after he died, and he only took 1 or 2 hits from me. And I was like, oh, okay, that's fair. You know what? That's fair. Good. I wanted to die. Yeah. Okay. So onto a couple bugs that I saw. If you crouch and walk into a rock, you can actually see straight through it, which means you can see any enemies as if the rock wasn't even there. And I tried this on a couple other rocks to see if it would work, and it did. And I'm not sure if it was just specific to the rocks that I was at or if it's with all rocks, but yeah. The other type of bug I saw, I kind of mentioned earlier with the guy who was stuck in the stairs. Well, he wasn't the only one. There's also people who were stuck in a certain pose, people who were just stuck in the ground, and some people who were stuck levitating. Aside from all that, I still had a really fun time while stress testing, and I should mention that if you're not in it already, I highly recommend joining the official Ashes of Creation Discord, which I'll link in the description down below. Everyone in there was super friendly, everyone was having a good time while stress testing, people were getting into voice chat and communicating, and some people were even forming teams so that they could cheese their way to victory, like losers. But yeah, I will be streaming and recording Ashes of Creation once the NDA drops, so I hope some of you guys will be looking forward to that. See ya.